in the deep recesses of the earth, where time was but a whisper and the dead roamed in silent processions, Hades sat upon his throne, a ruler with no kingdom of the living. His realm was vast, stretching far beyond what mortal minds could comprehend. Dark rivers winding through ghostly plains, ancient caverns echoing with the sighs of souls who had long since faded into memory. He had watched the world turn, centuries rolling into eternity, yet nothing changed for him. Unlike his brothers Zeus and Poseidon, who reign over the sky and the sea, his dominion was one of silence and stillness. Mortals spoke of him in hushed voices, never calling upon him unless necessity demanded it. There was no celebration in his name, no temples filled with offerings of love. Hades had always been an outsider, bound by fate to a kingdom none wished to enter. He had made peace with his solitude, or so he believed, until something within him stirred. Something unfamiliar, something he had not felt in eons. At first, it was merely a thought, a fleeting curiosity when his gaze drifted upward, toward the world that thrived in the light. He had always been indifferent to Olympus and its gods, to the mortals who worshipped them. But there was one presence that haunted him, one name that carried to the winds like a song woven into the very fabric of existence. Persephone. She was the daughter of Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, the bringer of spring. The world spoke of her as Kore, the maiden, untouched and pure. She was said to be as radiant as dawn itself, the very embodiment of renewal and youth. But what was youth if it remained trapped in the same cycle, untouched by change? For the first time in an eternity, Hades felt something stir within the cold expanse of his being. He had known desire before, had seen beauty in the faces of nymphs and goddesses alike, but this was different. It was not mere longing, it was recognition. Far above the underworld, in fields kissed by sunlight and adorned with golden blossoms, Persephone danced through the meadows, her bare feet sinking into the soft earth. She was a child of warmth, of endless springs and bountiful harvests, beloved by mortals and gods alike. Yet, despite the laughter that surrounded her, a quiet restlessness gnawed at the edges of her soul. Her mother, Demeter, had sheltered her from the world, keeping her close, keeping her safe. For years, she had lived within the comfort of familiarity, walking the same fields, tending to the same flowers, smiling at the same faces. It was a beautiful existence, yet it was incomplete. She felt it in the quiet moments, when the wind carried secrets beyond the hills, when the night stretched endless and deep, whispering of places she had never seen. There was something missing, something beyond the golden fields and her mother's watchful gaze. She longed to understand what lay beyond the world she had known. She longed to see more than the sunlit heavens. It was this longing that led her farther than she had ever dared to go before. The meadows stretched endlessly, yet on the horizon, something new awaited, a place untouched, where the flowers were darker, where the air carried a scent both sweet and foreboding. And there, among the wildflowers, it waited, the narcissus, a single bloom, pale as moonlight, its petals trembling in the breeze. It was unlike any flower she had ever seen, its beauty haunting, its presence strange. Something about it called to her, and without hesitation, she reached out. The moment her fingers brushed the petals, the world around her shifted. Hades had not planned to take her. He had not set out that day to change fate, nor had he ever dreamed of claiming something that did not belong to him. But when he saw her, when his eyes met hers for the first time, fate no longer felt like something he could resist. She did not belong in his world, yet she had stepped so close to its edges. The ground trembled beneath her feet as shadows rose, curling like the hands of fate, reaching out to claim what had already been written in the stars. The world above seemed to hold its breath, the sky paling, the wind stilling. Persephone did not scream. She did not flee. Instead, she turned toward the darkness, toward the figure emerging from the depth of the earth, and for the briefest moment, she hesitated, not in fear, but in something else, recognition. And then, the earth swallowed her whole. The underworld was nothing like Persephone had imagined. It was not a land of despair, nor a prison of torment. It was vast and ancient, carved from obsidian and shadow, yet it breathed an eerie kind of beauty. The air was thick with the scent of night-blooming flowers, and the rivers, though dark, whispered stories and voices soft in the wind. She walked to the great halls, her footsteps echoing against the marble floors, her hands trailing over pillars that had stood since time itself was young. And Hades watched her. He had expected anger, fear, resentment, but instead, he found something far more dangerous. Curiosity. She did not shrink from the darkness, nor did she weep for the world she had left behind. Instead, She studied her surroundings with an intensity that unsettled him, as if she were trying to understand something even she could not name. And as the days passed, that curiosity did not fade. It grew. She wandered the gardens, where pale flowers bloomed in eternal twilight. She stood by the rivers, where souls drifted like fallen leaves. She listened, not just to the voices of the dead, but to the silence that filled the spaces between them. And she saw him, not as the monster the world feared, not as a thief of innocence, but as a god who had spent eternity alone. And she did not turn away. Time passed, though neither Hades nor Persephone measured it. The underworld had no seasons, no rising sun or setting moon to mark the passing of days. Yet within the stillness, something new began to bloom, an understanding neither of them had expected. Persephone no longer wandered with mere curiosity. She walked with familiarity. The halls of the underworld, once foreign, now felt like something she had always known, as though she had stepped into a place where a part of her had always belonged. Hades watched her from a distance, afraid to disturb whatever peace she had found within his world. He was a god who had lived without hope, without expectation of companionship. He had never asked for her, never planned for her presence in his life. And yet, now that she was here, he found himself fearing the moment she might leave. Persephone had not spoken of returning to the world above, nor had she begged for freedom. But Hades knew, sooner or later, she would think of the sun, of the wind, of the golden fields that once cradled her steps. And when that day came, he would have no power to keep her. Yet, despite the weight of inevitability, he allowed himself to watch her, to cherish the presence of something he had never known he needed. He did not approach, did not press his desires upon her, but he felt her presence in every corner of his kingdom. And what terrified him most was that she did not resent him for bringing her here. She had not run from him, had not cursed his name. Instead, she had remained, wandering the halls, listening to the stories whispered by the river of the dead, standing beneath the ghostly willows that wept silver leaves upon the earth. She was not afraid of the dark, and he had never known a light like her before. But fate was not kind to those who defied its will. Far above, in the world of the living, the land withered under Demeter's sorrow. The harvest rotted, the rivers ran dry, and the air grew cold with grief. The goddess of the harvest had searched for her daughter, her cries filling the heavens, her rage shaking the foundations of Olympus. No mortal had seen the maiden of spring. No god had dared to speak the name of the one who had taken her. But Demeter knew. She knew who dwelled beneath the earth, who ruled in silence and shadows. And when she spoke his name, it was with fury that threatened to unravel the heavens themselves. Yet Hades did not return Persephone, not because he wished to defy Olympus, not because he sought war with the gods, but because he could not bring himself to let go of the only thing that had ever made his world feel whole. And Persephone, when she learned of her mother's suffering, felt the weight of love and duty settle upon her chest. She had been happy here, in ways she had never expected. The underworld had been a prison at first, a place she had been stolen into, but now it was something else, a home. Yet, how could she abandon the mother who had raised her? How could she turn away from the love that had nurtured her since birth? Hades saw the conflict in her eyes long before she spoke it, and though his heart, which had long been untouched by mortal sorrows, now ached with the force of his own despair, he knew what must be done. So he told her. She was free to go. The gates of the underworld loomed before her, the path leading back to the world above stretching into the distance. Hades stood behind her, silent. He did not beg her to stay. He did not ask for anything, for he knew love, true love, could never be something that was held by force. It was not a chain nor a prison. It was a gift, one that could only be freely given. And so, with a voice that carried the weight of eternity, he told her that she could leave, that she could return to the world above, to her mother's embrace, to the warmth of the sun and the endless bloom of spring. Persephone turned to him, and for the first time, she saw not the god of the dead, not the ruler of the underworld, but the man who had given her something no one else ever had. Choice. He had stolen her from the world above, but he had never stolen her will. And in that moment, she knew this was never just fate. It was something deeper, something inevitable. She stepped forward, her fingers curling around the cold fruit in her palm. The pomegranate, red as spilled wine, rich with the taste of the underworld itself. She raised it to her lips, and she ate. The world above rejoiced at Persephone's return. Demeter wept with joy, the land bursting into bloom as the mother and daughter were reunited at last. But no spring could erase what had been done. Persephone had eaten of the underworld, had tasted its fruit, had bound herself to it in a way that could never be undone. She was no longer merely the maiden of spring. She was its queen, and thus a bargain was struck. For half the year, Persephone would walk the world above, bringing warmth and life to the earth, her mother's love an ever-present force around her. But when the seasons turned, when the last of the golden leaves fell, and the air grew heavy with the whisper winter, she would return. To him, to the kingdom of the dead, to the halls of shadow and silence, where her name was no longer a song of innocence, but a promise written into the very fabric of eternity. To Hades, who had loved her enough to let her go. And so, the world came to know the truth hidden beneath the changing of the seasons. Spring and summer were born from reunion. Autumn and winter were born from longing. And in the depths of the underworld, where the rivers whispered secrets that only the dead could hear, a god sat upon his throne, waiting for the moment his queen would return to him once more. For love, true love, is not always gentle. Sometimes it is a thing of tragedy, a thing of fate, a thing of eternity.